Complicated. Complicated.
Conflict between Israel and Islamist militants rages.
Children being caught in the crossfire.
In Gaza.
Militant groups fired more rockets into Israel over.
Sirens ringing out, warning Israelis to take cover.
Complicated. Conflicts are complicated. But the conflict between Israel and Palestine is especially complex because the fight is between two historically persecuted minorities. On one hand, we have the Arab Palestinians, who were first oppressed by the British and have been living under extreme hardships in Gaza under Israeli rule. On the other, we have the Israeli Jews, who were driven out of their homes in 70 CE and were harassed and persecuted wherever they went. Therefore, it becomes really difficult to take a clear stand with one side without thinking about how the other side is feeling. But it seems that the people on the internet don't have such dilemma. The internet is clearly divided into two parts. There are people who support Palestinians Then there are people who support Israel, saying that Israelis have the right to self-defense and protect themselves from the terrorist attacks by Hamas. And those people who are trying to be diplomatic and neutral.
The indiscriminate rocket firings from Gaza targeting the civilian population in Israel, which we condemn, and the retaliatory strikes into Gaza have caused immense suffering and resulted in deaths, including women and children,
are being hated by everyone. As I write this video, the fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas terrorists or militants has reached its 6th day. Hamas has fired more than 2,000 rockets into Israel, most of which were intercepted by Israel's air defense system named Iron Dome. Apart from rockets, Hamas is also launching improvised explosive drones into Israel. In retaliation to these attacks, the Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) has been conducting airstrikes and strikes from ground at Hamas's strongholds in Gaza. 136 people have been killed in Gaza, including 36 children, and 7 people have been killed in Israel, one of them being an Indian national from Kerala. As sirens warning of rocket attacks wail across Israel, people are spending more and more time inside bomb shelters. Whereas in Gaza, more than 10,000 people have moved out of their houses fearing airstrikes. Concerns have been expressed by the international community over the rising civilian casualties in Gaza. The IDF says that they are doing their best to minimize civilian casualties by only attacking areas used by Hamas terrorists. They are using tactics like roof knocking to warn innocent people out of an area before a major strike. In roof knocking, the IDF throws a non-explosive or low-explosive device over a civilian building to warn the people that in this area a major strike is going to happen. The IDF also says that the terrorists are hiding and attacking from residential areas. As a result, innocent civilians are being accidentally killed in counter-terrorism operations. On the other side, in West Bank, there are reports of Israeli and Arab mobs clashing with each other. One of the factors that led to the ongoing violence in Israel is the issue of Sheikh Jarrah. Sheikh Jarrah is a mostly Palestinian neighborhood in East Jerusalem. In the early 1900s, both Arabs and Jews along with some Christians lived here. Back then, Israel was called Palestine and it came under the Ottoman Empire. Later, British colonized it. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, many Jews inspired by the Zionist ideology started buying lands and properties in Palestine. Some of those people also settled in Sheikh Jarrah. In 1917, the British promised a Jewish national home in Palestine in return for Jewish support in the First World War. After the war ended, the British facilitated the return of Jews into Palestine. This immigration was hated by Palestinians, and there were riots between Arabs and Jews just like we see today. In 1948, the State of Israel was created by dividing Palestine into 3 parts. Gaza and West Bank came under the Palestinian rule, and rest of the country was given to Jews. But the city of Jerusalem was declared as an international city administered by the UN because it was holy to Christians, Muslims, and Jews. The Palestinians and the Arab countries did not like this arrangement. They felt that their land has been stolen and Jews have no place in Israel. Therefore, the day after the British left, all the countries surrounding Israel attacked it, along with Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen. This was called the First Arab-Israeli War. Israel defeated all of them and took control over West Jerusalem and all the areas leading to it. However, East Jerusalem, which Sheikh Jarrah is a part of, along with West Bank and Gaza, remained part of Palestine, and West Bank came under Jordanian influence. Following the war, the Jews living in Sheikh Jarrah had to move out, and Palestinian refugees from the war were settled in their houses. In 1967, the Third Arab-Israeli War took place, in which Israel once again defeated all the Arab nations, and this time took control over Gaza and West Bank. Following the war, they returned both the territories to Palestine, except East Jerusalem, which Sheikh Jarrah is a part of. After East Jerusalem came under Israeli control and naturally Israeli laws, it became possible for the Jewish families that had to leave Sheikh Jarrah in 1948 to reclaim their properties if they could show proof of ownership. Therefore, in 1982, some Jews sued Palestinian families living in Sheikh Jarrah for squatting in their houses. The court ordered in favor of the Jews because the Palestinian families could not show proof of ownership of their houses. But it also allowed those Palestinian families to live in their houses as long as they paid regular rent to the Jewish owners of their properties. Between 2002 to 2017, 43 families were evicted out of Sheikh Jarrah for not paying their rent or making illegal changes to their properties. The cases of last 4 such families was about to be heard by the Supreme Court earlier this month, which led to heightened tensions in Jerusalem and contributed to violence at Al-Aqsa. Now, to understand this whole situation fully, it is very important to know the history of Al-Aqsa and why it is important to Muslims and Jews alike. Al-Aqsa is the most holiest site for the Jews. They call it the Temple Mount. A really long time ago, there was a temple here made by a Jewish king named King Solomon, which was destroyed twice. What remains of the temple are its walls, and the Jews pray in front of the western wall. The western wall is also called the Wailing Wall because people pray really loudly in front of it. Moreover, people also say that it was on the Temple Mount where the father of Christianity, Islam and Judaism, Abraham, sacrificed his son Isaac to God. Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third most holiest site for Muslims. They call it the farthest mosque. It is believed that Prophet Muhammad visited heaven from the Dome of Rock, or Temple Mount as the Jews like to call it. And before Kaaba, all the Muslims used to pray in the direction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, therefore making this site a very important place for Muslims, Jews as well as Christians. The recent violence at Al-Aqsa Mosque was triggered after the Israeli police beefed up security and limited number of worshippers inside the mosque during the holy month of Ramzan due to security reasons. This disgruntled a lot of Palestinians. On May 10, 2021, the tensions in the city exploded into violence when some Jews marched through Old City celebrating Jerusalem Day, the day when Israel captured East Jerusalem in 1967. Including Sheikh Jarrah. Therefore, to control the violence, the Israeli police had to enter Al-Aqsa Mosque and fire tear gas and rubber bullets. After the violence at Al-Aqsa, Hamas started firing rockets into Israeli cities from Gaza. The IDF retaliated and the situation got to where it is today. The situation between Hamas and Israel hasn't been this bad since 2014. And you might be wondering, why is Hamas firing so many rockets at Israel? How is the situation today different from what it was before? It's not like that the violence in Jerusalem is something new. It has been taking place since 1900s. And in Sheikh Jarrah too, Palestinian families have been evicted since early 2000s. This question has 2 possible answers, and one of them being local politics. In Palestine, there are 2 main political parties, Hamas and the Fatah party. Hamas has a stronghold in Gaza, and Fatah party is popular in West Bank. However, Hamas has been losing popularity in Gaza because it has been unable to provide economic growth to its people due to the blockade by the Israelis. People in West Bank, on the other hand, are doing comparatively well under Fatah party. Therefore, some experts believe that by fighting Israelis and firing rockets at them, Hamas is trying to project itself as a better alternative to Fatah party, who will defeat Israelis and reclaim their lost lands. Another reason why Hamas is being so aggressive is because of Iran. It is no secret that Iran is funding Hamas and is fighting a proxy war through it in Israel. Rocket attacks on Israel might be Iran's way of taking revenge for one of their nuclear facilities being destroyed earlier this year, which they think was destroyed by the Israelis. And Israel has a history of going into Iran and destroying its military facilities. Now that I've discussed everything, let's talk about the moral dilemma I talked about in the beginning of the video. There are 2 historically persecuted minorities fighting with each other. Innocent people are suffering, children are dying, and the situation is very, very sad. One side is very strong, but it is fighting to defend its people and prevent any further attacks on its population. The other side is deliberately provoking a stronger enemy for either petty politics or on command of a third country. It fully knows that if the enemy attacks, and it will attack, many of its own innocent people will die. Whose side will you take on? You decide. Thank you ladies and gentlemen for coming over to my vlog. I'll see you soon.